So first off, I want to just introduce our co-breakout host or hostess today, Melissa Flagg, who's absolutely incredible. I'm so excited you're all going to get to hear from her a bit. Melissa, do you want to just share a little bit about your background and say welcome to the group?
Sure. I'm actually from a really small town in Missouri, so never thought my life would be what it was. Pharmacist by my undergrad degree, got a PhD in pharmaceutical chemistry, thought I was going to cure tuberculosis. That obviously didn't happen. Wound up working on a fellowship at the State Department, which is what brought me to Washington, and then had this amazing opportunity with the Navy over in London and wound me up on this kind of career trajectory where I worked in various jobs throughout the Pentagon, the Navy, the Army. I did a stint in philanthropy as well. I ran my own consulting gig. And now I'm at a think tank in Washington and also a fellow at the GeoTech Center at the Atlantic Council with Stephanie. So I've had kind of very windy path to get where I am, but it's been a lot of fun. I was also the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for research at the Pentagon. I guess that's why people invite me places, so I should say that.
That's very funny. Yeah, from that perspective, I'd love to also just share that I too have had a very windy, I think, career in the best of ways that I think are possible in this day and age, which was I started out my career in the movie business. I thought I wanted to be a movie producer. Got to work on the sets of films with like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and Denzel Washington and Walk Jake Gyllenhaal's dog. It was all very glamorous. But I ultimately found that I wanted to go into social change. And so I ended up working with X Prize Foundation as a competition designer, got completely exposed and introduced to exponential technologies, ended up doing that for several years. It was an incredible opportunity. And then I went and taught at USC, University of Southern California, for a few years in design, innovation, and disruption. So complete pivot. And I would have never guessed each step along that road of the journey. They just unfolded. So anyway, I know, Melissa, since we're kind of an intimate group, I'm wondering if we can like do this, kind of relaxed style and just welcome a discussion between all of us today.
I would love that. Is there something specific you guys want to hear from us? I mean, there are so many great themes that came out of the discussion earlier this morning. We could draw on one of those, or we can just talk at you, but we would love to have it be more from you, more of a conversation. I mean, I would, yeah. Any questions or thoughts, or we'll just dive in. I could talk the paint off a wall in an empty room, so.
All right, one more second to jump in with a thought or question. Okay, then let's go. So I think one of the things we got excited about talking with y'all about today, and by the way, this is going to be freeform, so if you have a question as we kind of get into the conversation, please introduce it. We're very relaxed, as you can see. We wanted to talk a bit about what happens when we're in the workplace. Like what does it feel like to be championed in a space, in a tech space, in a policy space? And when has it felt like you weren't championed? And so, Melissa, I thought we could start there by having you tell us a little bit about a time in your professional life when you felt like you were championed and supported, especially in being a leader. So let me start there.
Yeah, thanks. I really loved what Wanda was saying. So I want to draw on that a little bit as I answer this question about raising your hand and the importance of raising your hand. So when my very first job, like proper job after my fellowship at the State Department, and I was hired at the Office of Naval Research, I was over in London and I was trying to figure out how to get back to the States, have employment, right? Because I needed a job. I was young. I was like 31. And the admiral back at the Office of Naval Research made me an offer. And I was just sort of like, that job is so big. And so like every voice in my head was screaming like, that's too big of a job. And I remember saying to the admiral, these are the types of things I want to do. And he was like, this is the price of doing what you want to do, is doing what I need you to do. But if you come and do what I need you to do, I will give you the chance to champion your own passion. And he was true to his word, right? He really gave me a lot of rope. I screwed up in some relatively spectacular ways on occasion, but that is for a happy hour sometime, not for this. but he was always there to back me up when things went wrong. And that was the thing that felt like I'm being championed in this moment. He was hard on me. I learned a lot. There was a lot of coaching, right? Of like, you have to get better at this. This is your weakness. But I remember a day at the Pentagon, this guy screaming at me. He was very stressed out with me. And I remember like telling the naval attaché guy, the Navy guy who was with me, like, this is really bad. The admiral's going to be really upset. He's like, nah, the admiral won't be upset. He's like, he likes somebody else to make this guy mad. He just doesn't want to do it himself. And so when I got back, the admiral laughed and said, like, walk me through what you learned. Walk me through how you would do that differently. Now, never make that mistake a second time, right? And so for me as a leader, when I have employees, I try really hard to mirror that, which is you really get a chance to screw up. It's okay. But like, I don't want you to screw up the exact same way over and over again. Like, find a new creative way to mess up, right? But I really try to remember that. However, if you're a leader and you give someone the opportunity and they say no, or they don't raise your hand, oftentimes those people don't have time to drag you along with them, right? You really do have to be ready and willing to step up to the plate and take some autonomy, right? Which can be scary, especially when you're earlier in your career, but I think it's always kind of scary. I do think that for me, that's what championing really looked like, right? It was like, I'm going to give you a lot of space. I don't expect you to be perfect, but I do expect you to learn every step of the way. And I think the flip side of that, I had another job where I felt like I had stopped learning, and I was feeling very frustrated in the job. So I decided it's not the job's responsibility to change to make me happy. It's my responsibility, once I've outgrown a job, to find a new job, right? So I went out and I found a new job. And when I told my boss that I was leaving government, his words were, "You are ungrateful, unpatriotic. I had a plan for you. You need to do as you're told," basically, right? And I was like, well, this makes me feel like this is not a good relationship, right? Like, that's not healthy, that's abusive. But what I found was that a lot of people around me were shocked that I didn't capitulate to that. Because I think some people grow up feeling so beholden to someone who's helped them, to someone who has mentored them and coached them, that if and when that moment comes, when, as Venus said, that relationship, it's time for it to change, they have a really hard time breaking out of being the child, right? Of being the grad student. Like, it's time to graduate and go get a job, right? And get out on your own. And so for me, I think it's also really important for you, again, to have that autonomy where you really know yourself well enough to know when it's time for that relationship to change. And as a leader, when you're hiring people and when you're mentoring them, to also have the self-awareness that even when it's inconvenient for you, it's always the priority that that person is growing. They are always the priority, even if it is inconvenient in the workplace. And that's something that I really try to take that experience, and I try to teach myself from that experience whenever someone's coming to me and they're an amazing employee and I love them to death and they're leaving, right? And it's like, okay, don't be that guy. Be the first guy.
I'm totally like cracking up because I'm like, I wish I'd learned that mistake way earlier in my career, like the knowing when it's okay to leave and knowing that there are better things ahead and not being like fearful about the scarcity of great work and great projects out there.
To be fair, I was 40, so don't have any misperceptions that this was like, it's a lifetime. It's a marathon, not a sprint, man.
I feel much more validated right now. Totally.
I'm going to say something, if that's okay.
Yeah,
go for it.
I think one of the most interesting things for me in my career has been, and I say this all the time to the people I work with, the best thing that can happen to me is that somebody gets promoted away from me. And it's a mentality that you have to have for the employees you have. And I've had a number of women do this. And the most interesting thing is it has to be them and what you want. I had one employee who, when she was under me, I would constantly talk to her about, what do you want your career to be? Where do you aspire to go? And she'd circle around it. You know, she wouldn't really say what she wouldn't. She didn't really drive it. And it wasn't until later, when I was then doing a different job, and she finally started moving up the promotion path, and I finally put it together. She had a stepson, and at that point he had reached the age of middle school.
Oh.
And she was willing to travel. She was willing to go out and do things that a higher position job would have required of her. But she didn't want to tell me that. And it was one of the most interesting things to say to her later. I'd have been okay knowing that.
Yeah.
You know, but you didn't want to tell me because you were afraid that I would see you poorly, and I wouldn't have. So sometimes people will grow at their own pace, and everything you say to them about what's the path, where you want to go, where's the direction, where do you see this, it'll just slam down, and it's not necessarily you. And that's another really important thing to realize, because all of us are mentors. All of us are mentees. Okay. I've worked at my current company for almost 32 years. I was in a mentoring position this year. Okay. I was being mentored by somebody working at a company over 30 years. Think about that. Okay. All of us can take that and learn. All of us are mentors to other people. All of us are growing people under you. And for me, honest to God, that's the most amazing thing, is to see somebody get promoted out under you. But I think you have to realize there's never a moment that you're one or the other. You're never just a mentee. You're never just a mentor. Somebody else somewhere is going to be giving you advice, maybe inside your company, maybe outside. You're going to be doing it, whether it's just a moment that you talk to somebody random at some conference, a moment that you do this. It's a constant changing role. And we all have to recognize, you know, what you can gain from that. So I think the thing to look at in all of these is that there's always change, there's always growth. The biggest thing, and I think Melissa hinted at a bit at this, never become overly reliant on a mentor. Never think that I have to talk to this person before I take this step. If that's your conditioning, that's not a great place to be, because the mentor sometimes will go. They'll get fired, okay? They'll retire. They'll leave. You'll be shifted into a different position. Maybe you'll take a different job. Maybe you'll have a different job handed to you. And you'll get someone who isn't necessarily as responsive or doesn't fit to your dynamic, et cetera, et cetera. So never put yourself in the position of over-reliance. A mentor is meant to be something you glance off of, not something you cling to. And I'll shut up now.
You know, it's such a great point. Like, I think if there's one piece I could offer to everyone, it's throw out some of the scripts that we've been told about how, you know, that you have to have a mentor, or you have to have a certain career path, or you have to have a certain way of showing up. Because I think if we're going to make change, we have to get rid of those scripts. Melissa, I see you nodding. Before I come back to you, I just want to give, is there anyone else that wants to jump in on the conversation, ask a question, or offer a piece of input? Maya, maybe?
Yeah, I had a question about taking on a leadership role in science, tech, and policy in general. When you were going for your first leadership role, taking on a new opportunity you hadn't done before, what are the kinds of things that you did to prepare yourself for that? I know in negotiation training, they often tell women, you know, when you're going into a negotiation, think about a time that you were successful before and going with that same mindset. If you're taking on a new leadership role that you haven't done before, do you have any like similar tips?
That's a great question. And I mean, I guess I'm going to say what Stephanie just said too. Like, first of all, you know, there's no script. So the thing that I think is most important is to like listen to yourself, right? There are certain things that each of us individually, and it varies from person to person, that you need to feel prepared, which makes you feel more confident. I really loved Wanda's talk. I feel like she's my new idol, because she articulated it so clearly that I do feel like when your confidence is high, your ability to go into an uncertain situation and to learn on the fly is much higher, right? If you go in and you're really stressed out. So for me, the first leadership role I went into, I had never managed people, and I was suddenly managing a couple of men that were much older than me. And so I was incredibly stressed out about that situation. So the first thing I did when I got to the organization was I talked to a young woman that I knew at the time and said, like, who can I trust in like the biz ops training HR kind of team to talk to about getting some training, leadership training, management training, but also just like conflict resolution and critical conversations training and stuff like that, because these guys were clearly not interested in my success. And I was directed to a guy who got a coach for me, and they gave me it was just 3 hours of coaching. And she would meet with me in 15-minute intervals and give me little sort of like practices to do. And it increased my confidence so much, because in the moment when someone was kind of engaging me negatively, it was almost like I could go back to the classroom, because obviously I spent like 9 years in school. So I like the classroom, right? And I just like would look at it like a scientist, like, okay, this is part of the training. She told me when this happens to think about it this way, to depersonalize it a little bit, to not go into the emotion with him, to understand that he's hurting, that he does have some legitimate concerns, to hear him. And it was just this, like, for me, it was super powerful because I knew what my worry was. And I reached out, I found a trusted partner in the organization, and they helped me resolve it. So for me, this idea of really like knowing what your concern is, spending some time with yourself to know that, and then coming up with a pathway to prepare yourself is really powerful. It's different for everybody.
Yeah, I would add to that too, that I think that, and it's funny, I'm just recently leveled up into a job where I'm managing a lot more team members and in a whole different kind of job paradigm. And it was a real challenge to have to like let go of how things got done and to like build out trusting the team to get things done, but then also having to help. I think sometimes as a woman in the workplace, you have to really be clear about here's where you need to loop me in, and here's how you need to communicate with me, and here's how you make me not crazy as a manager, and like really give people the like rule book to you. So that they understand how to help you. I think the other scary part about, there's sort of two pieces that are scarier about management that I did not give past managers enough credit for, I think. One is that the more you move up, the more turbulence you experience, and the more you see, and the more, so things move faster, you're more likely to see problems, you're more likely to see that things are going to change organizationally because more stuff gets put in the queue. Kind of, so you have to like help your team through that, and you have to be really strategic about when do I loop the team in and how do I help them navigate that, and when do I like not tell the team in order to protect them and keep them focused. And it's a really hard line because it's about all of the trust and interpersonal dynamics that you're building. So like that turbulence piece is one piece, and then I think understanding that you have to do more with less time has been sort of at times really terrifying, and having to learn like what you can let go of and what ultimately is not getting you to the end goal. And also knowing that changes. I sort of developed these absolute scripts about, oh, I'm going to manage my boss this way, and my last manager liked it this way, and my previous job liked it that way. It took me a really long time to understand that like every situation is different. Every scenario requires you bringing different skill sets to the table. But what I think will serve you all really well is in trying to figure out what are your strengths and how do you show up from a place of your strength. I think a lot of time women are sort of like pushed into showing up through a place of weakness, or they're pushed to like show up in certain ways, and they're not actually, no one's ever, I mean, I can remember the first time a manager was like, you're good at this. And I was like, I'm good at something? Like what? Like, what do you mean? And like completely just missed it. And when I learned that that was my asset, and I learned how to show up with that asset in more workplace situations, my whole career changed. Right. So I think that's part of it too. Yeah, Melissa or anyone else?
I don't know where we are on time. Are we at the end?
Yes. No, we are still on time.
So I guess I want to add one thing to that and just pull in that. I think specifically in science, it's an interesting dynamic because you have a lot of experts, and they're legit experts, right? So I can remember in my job as DASD at the Pentagon, I'd have a brief in the morning on quantum computing, and the next brief would be on synthetic biology. And the next brief would be on, there's a linking roof at the Naval Research Lab and you need to figure out how to get the roof fixed. And then the next one would be a meeting on how do we hire scientists at the lab? And then the next one would be on AI. And so I'm never the expert, but I was raised to be an expert, right? And so I had to find, like what Stephanie was saying about showing up as yourself, like authenticity. People feel it. When you're trying to pretend to be a man doing that job, everyone feels your discomfort, everyone in the room, right? And when I just sunk into, like, I'm a generalist now, and I know the value I add to the expert because they don't want to do the stuff I do, right? They don't want to worry about the leaking roof at NRL or hiring scientists for the AI team, right? They want to worry about their quantum computer that's going to be here in 30 years, right? And so I had to learn to have like really honest conversations that were awkward, right? With people who were just like, I'm the most important person. I'm the expert. You don't know anything. And I'm like, this is true in your space. And I'll hold this space for you. But you're not the only problem I have to worry about today, right? And there's only so much money. And there were just times when I had to just really explain all the turbulence, right? Until you just kind of see that look on their face glaze over. And now I see some of these scientists and they're just like, you were always so patient with us. You explained things to us. You gave us details. I'm like, yes, because you're a scientist and I'm one too. And I knew you needed more information to process this, right? So I think like in science and technology, you also have to really know the room of like, are you talking to policymakers? Less details. Are you talking to scientists? Way more details, right? And as this like person who's often in the translation sandwich of that leadership role, reading your audience and showing up from a place of authenticity for you is really important, I think.
Yeah, I just completely agree with that.
I think I saw Denise put her hand up. I'm not sure. Did you, Denise?
Yeah,
I
Denise?
did. I just wanted to add a little bit, mostly to what Stephanie was saying. So I'm with IT project management, and I've kind of worked up the ranks and leadership there. And I find one of the biggest differences is you're in leadership without the management. So you've got kind of all of that, which you were talking about with, facilitating and conflict management and dealing with the, business versus technology, that conduit between the teams, with no authority because nobody actually reports into me. So also working with their managers and dealing with the personnel issues, but you don't have that authority. My entire career, which is way too long, never having that direct reports. I run the project. I don't run people. So there's certain, I guess, different challenges, but kind of sort of the same challenges as you're seeing that you're talking about for people managers, people leaders
I
that we
think it's
deal with
almost
projects.
harder what you're describing because you really have to you have to manage out all the time, right? You are managing people, you just aren't doing it with any actual authority. And so that human element of what you have to learn to do to hear the problem and to find out how do I give them a solution in a way that they're actually going to hear it and take it in and stop screaming and panicking and freaking out because their computer doesn't work or whatever, right? I think a lot of quote unquote support functions like contracting and human resources and IT, they have this same struggle where they may not be directly the mission, like a DoD, right? War fighting is the mission, but like it doesn't happen without all of these other things. And I think often we forget about bringing those like functional roles into the leadership conversation. So I think it's great that you brought that up.
And as you were talking about in the beginning of your conversation about that training, you went to that new position and we're asking, we get left out of that conversation as well because we're not managers. But again, we use a lot of those same skills. So those auxiliary roles would really benefit in some of that official training as well.
That's a great point. So we're getting down to our last couple minutes. I want to turn back to you, Melissa, for a quick lightning round of your final thoughts, and then I'd welcome any last questions or final thoughts from the group. So Melissa, go for it. I think for me, I really do want to go back to this idea of authenticity. Most of my career, I'm 48, so most of my career I'm kind of in this sandwich generation, right? Between the women who came before me had it really hard, and the women who are coming after me feel so much more empowered to ask for things, which I am so proud of and grateful for and impressed by, right? But I think the one thing that I always really clung to just from an internal place was, I'm not going to do this like a man. Not because I've had such great men in my life who've mentored me and coached me and lifted me up and been my ally, but because that wasn't me. So I wore pink dresses to the Pentagon, and I dyed my hair when I wanted to, and I did me. And when it didn't work in that role, I found a role where it did work. And I went really far in my career already, and I still have a good 25 or 30 years left to work. Hopefully. I have health insurance, so maybe that'll work. So I guess I want people to like come at this from a place of, there isn't a script, but that's a good thing, right? You get to write it, but there's a lot of us who can help you edit the script, right? There's a lot of us who can help help you do the work, but like ultimately you're the author. Like, you're the author of your script. Don't let someone else tell you how to write it. I'm just not going to say anything after that. And Melissa Flagg is my new hero. That's the other thing I'll say. Jackie, welcome to this group. It's been an incredible discussion and a privilege to facilitate in here. Do you have any announcements or last words for our guests?
I do not. I am just really excited that this has finally happened. I want to thank both you, Steph, and Melissa for having this conversation with us. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Did you all get a chance to speak? Denise, Diane, Mary, is it Lisan? Lisan? I feel like your name is very... I can see you trying to unmute. Yeah, I can unmute you.
Yes, Lisan. Or in my native language, we're going to be Lisan through A. So Lisan, yes.
Amazing.
And a big hug and let's say greetings from Madrid. Actually, I joined from Spain.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible. That is why we love this. Like, you know, the beauty of technology bringing us all together. No words. I just want to come in to wrap it up. Once again, Melissa and Stephanie, thank you so much for doing this. Ladies, thank you for joining. Together we can move the needle, and these conversations are one step in the right direction to doing that. So without further ado, I'm going to end it up here, and feel free to reach out to us at any point. We will be sending the recordings out for those who have missed it, because unfortunately it's late on the East Coast and in Spain. So, thank you again, and we will see you soon.
It's really late in Spain. Pleasure to speak with everyone.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye, everybody. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day.